Welcome to the second panel of this morning, making historical protagonists relevant for today's and tomorrow's society. We have 4 institutions, 4 historical sites, 2 houses dealing with literature, 2 houses with history, archaeology, and the reason to be for these institutions is, of course, history, but the big task is how they bring the history to the present. So we like to talk this morning about this transfer, about how you can transform the history to our days, to the present and the future. And I think I hope we agree that just to show the past itself is not the goal. The goal is why is the past relevant for nowadays? And we will talk about that. I like now to introduce the panelists. Clara Rios, in the middle, is director of Fernando Pessoa, of the Casa Fernando Pessoa in Lisbon. Then to my right, Nini Sanadiradze, she's director of Ilya Chavchavadze Literary Memorial Museum in Tbilisi, Georgia. Then Elena Moran, on the left, is director of the Lagos Museum in Lagos, Portugal. It's a part of a city museum group. And to her right, Elena will talk in Castellano, and we have the translation that helps us then to translate it in English. And on my right side, Melanie Cornelis, director of Espace Muséal d'Andenne from Belgium. My name is Beat Hechler. I'm curator and director of Swiss Alpine Museum. So you saw the mountains in some presentation before. And I'm very happy to have this panel with you. We start directly with the presentations. I don't ask questions after the presentations. I like to use the time then for our talk afterwards. So, Museo de Lagos will start. Thank you. I didn't introduce you. It's Catarina Alves from the team of the Lagos Museum.
Good morning. We would like to thank EMYA for the opportunity of being here and learn with the experience of all these amazing museums. And now we'll start. So located in Algarve, the southmostern region of Portugal, the Museum of Lagos is a multi-branched institution with 5 museum branches. We are presenting here today the main one, Dr. José Formosinho. Founded in 1930 on the initiative of José Formosinho and under a municipal governing body, the Museum of Lagos was first installed in the sacristy of St. Anthony's Church, a national monument which was immediately integrated into the visitor circuit and is currently the 3rd most visited monument in Algarve. Gradually acquiring a regional scope, the museum has expanded its facilities, incorporating a growing collection of, for example, religious art, archaeology, or natural history, so that at the beginning of this century, the facilities were unsuitable neither for visitors nor for the exposed objects. The political decision to renovate the museum's facilities and expand it to house the archaeology collection was only taken after a flood with damage of some items and a warning of a possible collapse of the ceiling of St. Anthony's Church. Despite the fact that the architectural project was already approved, in 2017, a new municipal governing body decided that the museum needed a new museological program and a new museographical discourse. This meant that there was not a real-time collaboration between the museology and the architectural plan, in which we were to find some serious problems. So we faced some challenges. Imperfections in the architectural project were only solved already during the implementation phase of the museography. We give you some examples. The renovated reception had to be demolished because it was not accessible at all. And some holes in the floor to light the Renaissance portal were mousetraps for accidents. But fortunately, we overcame these situations and the visiting conditions were properly developed. The new museological program and museographical project were based on a main priority, which was to remain faithful to the concept of the museum's founder, José Formosinho. We wanted to continue his original idea of a museum with and for the community, by strengthening people's relationship with this space and its emblematic artifacts, but at the same time modernizing and updating the museum. Formosinho made this museum with a large number of objects given by the citizens of Lagos, and the new narrative was constructed from the collection and not on the contrary, from the main historic literary narrative illustrated by the collection items. Against the clock, we started to study the different collections, selecting the items for the long-term exhibition, and around 1,500 pieces, most of them today in exhibition, were restored. Here is one of the examples where you can see the state of preservation of the collection and how it is now. Some objects were at risk of being lost. Of course, this was not possible with our small team, but only with the help of lots of friends, of several national museums, and of course, a budget and European funds that allowed us to work, including increasing the collection through the purchase of objects that enriched the exhibition. With the aim of promoting physical, social, and intellectual access to cultural participation, the museum has now available a multimedia application with an audio guide, audio description, and side language. In addition to models in relief or of the exhibited pieces, a tactile treadmill, and tables in Braille. This museum was made with the community participation and is adapted for blind visitors. Lagos has the largest number of blind children in all Algarve, so we have been working in a collaborative process with the schools from Lagos, who helped us to find the most efficient way to transmit the message across the museum. At this level, a deaf-mute member of our team who works on inventory has been producing videos with Portuguese and international sign language. He himself has made modifications to the initial experience in order to improve the museum communication. These 5 years of change have allowed us to update some regulatory documents of the museum's activity, and so important as that, allowed us to bring the museum community together. But the challenges go on. We have a small team that ensures daily functioning of the branches that are open to the public, including the Dr. José Formosinho branch. So we rely on community participation and integrate volunteers for participatory inventory and educational activities. José Formosinho once said that the museum belongs to us all, and our team, who we publicly thank here, awaits you all in Lagos. Thank you.
It's you, right?
Good morning, everyone. I would like to start by thanking EMYA, the EMF and Barcelona History Museum for organizing this event, giving us the opportunity to meet and to share experiences. My presentation will start with a short video.
A Casa Fernando Pessoa é um museu de literatura dedicado a um dos mais reconhecidos escritores portugueses do século XX. Fernando Pessoa viveu neste edifício os últimos 15 anos de vida. Fica em Lisboa e foi inaugurada em 1993. Em 2020 foi remodelada. Reabriu ao público mais acessível, sustentável e com uma nova exposição de longa duração. Privilegiando a inclusão, procuramos responder a necessidades e expectativas dos visitantes. A acessibilidade é entendida de forma integrada. Melhorar o acolhimento ao público é um processo contínuo. Foi instalado piso podotátil nas áreas de circulação. Na exposição, há materiais táteis e legendas em braille. Os conteúdos audiovisuais incluem legendagem e interpretação em língua gestual portuguesa. O mobiliário da exposição é acessível. Todos os textos que redigimos seguem os princípios da linguagem clara. A coleção está disposta de forma a acompanhar e a envolver o visitante. Começa com as primeiras palavras escritas por Pessoa, aos 6 anos, e termina com a última frase que anotou na véspera da sua morte. A partir de livros, documentos, fotografias e objetos usados por Fernando Pessoa, contam-se histórias sobre a vida e a obra do escritor. Os visitantes participam na construção da sua experiência no museu, descobrindo o que se vai revelando. A programação é diversificada e regular. Há programas para diferentes idades, dentro e fora de portas. Há também uma biblioteca especializada em poesia, com um catálogo de poetas portugueses e estrangeiros em livre acesso e para empréstimo. Receber melhor uma maior diversidade de visitantes é o trabalho diário da equipa da Casa Fernando Pessoa. Venha e sinta-se em casa.
So, as you could see in the video, Casa Fernando Pessoa is a museum of literature in Lisbon, Portugal, responsible for preserving, studying and promoting the legacy of Fernando Pessoa, a Portuguese poet and writer, nowadays recognized worldwide in the literary field and translated to more than 40 languages. Pessoa died in 1935. Casa Fernando Pessoa is located in the building where Pessoa lived his last 15 years. So he lived there in the first floor, and the museum occupies the whole building. It was inaugurated in 1993, so it will be 30 years old this year in November. It is a municipal museum. In the end of the 80s of last century, the Lisbon City Council bought the building, which was then in bad condition. Nowadays, the museum houses a library specializing in world poetry, an auditorium, a gift shop and bookstore, a restaurant and cafeteria with terrace, apart from, of course, the long-term exhibition and the temporary exhibition halls. The building is accessible for visitors with disabilities. We develop diverse educational projects, and we address different profile audiences with a dynamic, I can say, plan of events. Here are some views of the museum, the new entrance, the ticket office. Casa Fernando Pessoa went through relevant renovation works and reopened to the public in 2020, refurbished and more accessible with a new long-term exhibition. Sharing stories and facts about Pessoa's genius and exceptionality with visitors is our everyday work. Our aim is that visitors leave Casa Fernando Pessoa, casa means house, taking good memories from their experience, stories, conversations, and discoveries that have interested or moved them personally. I show you some views of the exhibition. Pessoa is mainly known for having created lots of literary personas or personae, more than 100 in fact, but some of those he developed quite a lot, and he signed some of his main texts under these names. He called these other names heteronyms. Here we can see his private library, our most valuable collection. It is digitized and accessible online. A view of the temporary exhibition that can now be visited about Book of Disquiet, one of Pessoa's most famous titles, and let's say the reconstruction, in abstract terms, of the apartment where he lived. So we talk in a room mostly about Pessoa as a writer, then Pessoa as a reader, and the connection we can draw between reading and writing, and then in the apartment where he previously lived with his family and then by himself, we talk more about his biography. Going forward, I can tell you, I share with you that the mission of Casa Fernando Pessoa is to share and generate knowledge about life and work of Fernando Pessoa, but also to promote reflection and debate on the power of literature and the transformative effects of reading. Our work is based on the principles of inclusion, non-discrimination, and on the understanding of cultural participation as a right. We work mainly in 3 areas. 1, developing knowledge about Pessoa and safeguarding his heritage, especially in activating his relationship with today's readers, writers, researchers, and visitors. 2, participation in the contemporary poetry circuit within a broad range of fields, including publishing, translation, criticism, and literary studies. And 3rd, promotion of reading, writing, and literacy as forms of enjoyment, expression, learning, empowerment, and development of empathy. The museum is a living organism. It is never complete, never finished. When visitors enter the museum, they make it react and reinvent itself. Some of our programs with guided tours in Portuguese Sign Language, audio description, the relaxed sessions dedicated mainly to people with intellectual or sensory disabilities, some views of our other programs, educational programs, the library, a special program of telephone calls to read poems or short text, not only by Pessoa, and a view of our facade with the program where we made with the local parish these flags with verses that also the neighbors can go and put on their own balconies and windows. And just to finish, diversity, inclusion, and equity in access to culture are fundamental to Casa Fernando Pessoa's project. We believe that promotion of literacy, as I said before, is crucial to the full exercise of freedom of expression. We have the responsibility and the pleasure of working with books. Every day we realize how language is important to understand and express ourselves. Literature makes us experience new perceptions of the world and other ways of living. Thank you very much.
Dear Chair, dear guests, dear colleagues, I'm honored today to speak to you about the Union of Tbilisi Museums and the work that has been done to preserve and promote museum mission with the example of Ilia Javjawadze Memorial Museum of Tbilisi. Hope here everybody knows about Tbilisi and Georgia. This is a very small country with a big heart, with a big history and culture, and with a lot of problems. From 1921, when Georgia lost independence and again was occupied and ruled by Soviet Union, we lost our way to European values and democracy. From 18th century, my country has tried very hard to unite the civil society and establish independent and strong state. During this time, there was growing movement for Georgian national independence and autonomy, which was led by Georgian intellectuals and political leaders. The movement sought to preserve Georgian culture, language, and traditions, and began to create political and economical freedom for the Georgian people. Discussion about our museums is important to describe the process of the period of Soviet Union. The Soviet Union culture policy was based on the idea that art and culture should serve the goals of Communist Party. Despite the fact that we represent EMYA Javjavadze Museum, the concept and art scenography of the museum represents the history of stand of the civil achievements. History of EMYA Javjavadze Museum starts from 1982, and they are like other museums in Georgia and like other house museum of my country. It was a place of importance of part and space of keeping only special histories. From 1982, museum was serving only schools and special events dedicated to birthday and achievements. Described to merge city 9 museums into the one institution was based on reality and exciting situation. The museum either should have met the modern meaning of the museum, modern understanding of the society, or they would have disappeared one by one, other over the time. The Tbilisi Museum Union was founded 2016, and it unites 9 house museum and 1 big museum of toys and toys. And the house museum belonging the main important names of the Georgian history and creation of Georgian culture, including EMYA Javjavadze name and house museum of him. Before I will describe process of rehabilitation and renovation of the Museum of Culture Heritage, I would like to say a few words of EMYA Javjavadze. His importance to Georgia today lies to his contribution to the country culture and national identity, as well as his advocacy for the democracy and human rights, especially European context since 19th century. He played the key role of the Georgian national liberalization movement and was involved in several uprisings against Russian Empire, which led to Georgian running from Russian Empire. Moreover, EMYA Javjavadze's commitment to these ideas can serve an inspiration and guidance for the modern society, and today it's a symbol for the state democratization. From establishment of Tbilisi Museums Union, the time starts very difficult. From establish and for many difficulties with the financial and economical situation or the political reasons. But it was extremely interesting at the same time, the process of reorganization and development of the concept of the museum, of the creation, new exhibition and content of the mission. From beginning, we faced several key challenges. The main important thing, it was the role and historical context of the museum, the main understanding of the exhibition and the person as EMYA Javjavadze. Meaning of museums on the city life, museum as a culture hub, museum as a bridge between past and future. And most important, it was to save the culture heritage as a building. As I mentioned, EMYA Javjavadze Museum is the largest cultural heritage object under the Tbilisi Museum Union, and we passed 4 years for the rehabilitation process. The monument was really very damaged, and it was the big challenge for rehabilitation work. During 4 years rehabilitation work, we carried out many different directions of challenges, including structural establishment of the historical building. And we see the all challenges that we passed from the 2016 till today on your screen. Today, Ilya Javjavadze's Literary Memorial Museum stands as a shining example of the house museum rehabilitation and dedication of preserving and promoting cultural heritage. But the museum for us is not only cultural storage. It is the center of the host and exhibition, lectures and different discussion, play and games, and the events of the celebration and to the live contribution. Today, our museum reflects the history of the 19th century till today, the urban and architectural context, and this history of the statehood. Main idea it was to show the history from the person to the state. It was also important to organize exhibition which dedicated to Ilya Javjavadze and his team. And in the memorial space is to renovate it as it was the 19th century. Space is dedicating to the second half of the 19th century. And it's not only dedicated of him, but it's with different activities, different facilities, different results, we try to show the illustrating the culture and social transformation of the country. Today, museum offers various different exhibition and memorial spaces. Museum collection and historical items arranged by the time relevance and the necessary for the modern museum, including the many different things. There you can see the facilities, different audiovisual materials, the audio guides, and the recreation areas, the study places, co-working places, education spaces, the green covers in the yard, and the most important for us, it is the play. The contemporary Georgia, especially the today Ilya Javjavadze, is widely regarded as a national hero whose legacy continues to inspire Georgians for the better future. And his contribution to Georgian culture and society remains today our main goals for these ideas to him and create modern public space that meets and needs the expectation of museums today. With the different directions we provided, we need a lot of time to talk about all the work for 4 years, the results. But the main result, it is some different educational programs, the strong community that we have around, the different social programs. The main goal it was to be involved in the rehabilitation program with the National Agency of the Crime Preservation and Probation, and to work with the different ages of the prisoners. Traditional Thursday discussions that it starts from Ilya Javjavadze's time, from 19th century, and it is the place, and it was a time when it was discussion about the democracy from 19th century and the development of the country. One of the key achievements of our museums is our collection. I have to say thanks to the dedicated efforts of our team that more than 200 objects has been returned on the museums that it was lost during the 40 years, during Soviet time. And finally, I must express the pride that we have done our goal of realizing Ilya Javjavadze's dream. Our museum has become a platform for important discussion on human rights and democracy, serving as a bridge of community and hope and the new generation. It's a place for the discussion for different ideas, different interests of the people. And I would like really to say thanks that we are here and for the time that we pass together with the team that we make this kind of result with Ilya Javjavadze's museum renovation. I would like really to say thanks for your attention, and I hope one day we will meet in Tbilisi, and looking forward to you in Georgia and Ilya Javjavadze's museum.
Good morning. Thank you. I'm gonna present you the museum Espace Muséal d'Andenne in the French-speaking part of Belgium. The entire museum has been relocated to a new modern building named Le Phare, the lighthouse in English. In this contemporary space, the museum shares the building with the tourist office and the town's library. The museum is situated on the second, third, and fourth floors, while two temporary exhibition spaces are located on the third and the fifth floors. The ticket office and shops are located on the ground floor, sharing space with the local tourist office. The building also houses one of the last remaining Art Deco swimming pools in Belgium. The objective is to transform it into a multifunctional space with a passive design, as you can see in this slide. Two museums merged and moved in a new building to create the Espace Muséal d'Andenne in July 2020, consisting of the collection of the Museum of the Ceramic of the City and the Skladina Cave Archaeological Center. This merger was faced with two major challenges: creating a current cultural program and opening in a small provincial town during a health crisis with limited media coverage. This very limited media campaign forced us to be very innovative for the development of a unique brand and to change the reputation of an old-fashioned museum structures. The collection of the Espace Muséal d'Andenne are made up of the collections from two museums, Skladina Cave Archaeological Center and the Ceramic Museum of the City. The museum aims to be a territory museum that combines art and archaeological, science, and local heritage museums. It plans to extend its audience to national and international scales by showcasing social issues via temporary exhibitions that are less specialized and more representative of our society. Our new museum faces several challenges. One of the most critical challenges is combining two collections into one museum, given the disparate nature of ceramic, prehistory, and the site history. It must offer a solid and relevant guide to visitors. The museum also works with research centers worldwide to promote the history of the Neanderthals, thanks to the discovery made in the Skladina Cave, a unique archaeological site which has been delivering Neanderthal remains since 1990. The site is also shortlisted to become part of the UNESCO Cultural Heritage. The site has been under a continuous program of excavation since 1985. Publics are welcome to visit the cave, accompanied by the cultural mediators who are in charge of the dissemination. They are regularly trained in a new scientific discovery, and a specific department has been created in our institution to act as a bridge between the public and the scientific department. Aside the Skladina Cave, the excavation service can also be involved in the field investigations of multiple contexts, particularly those related to ceramics or the history of the city. Visits of the excavations are also organized. Our activities are therefore spread over several places: the prehistoric context, the historical one, as well as the museum and the setting for the collections. The museum has also created tailor-made educational programs for different target groups, temporary exhibition projects that go beyond the strict framework of local heritage, and theme days that encourage interactions between different generations. The museum has highlighted inclusion and openness to so-called minority and socio-culturally vulnerable audiences by creating tailored offers with an attractive pricing policy and adapt general conditions. It also established a support committee comprising some 30 minority audience representatives and developed mediation tools for all audiences. Today, our biggest challenges with this program are raise awareness among the rest of the team and our counterparts in the Walloon museum sector, to become a reference for social organizations managing cultural and inclusion programs in Wallonia. And then it's a delicate personal balance because there is a fine line between the position of social workers and cultural mediators. The program relies above all on the impulse of the museum management and the field of the work of one dedicated person. Lastly, the museum developed a new type of management to ensure internal communication flows easily between these three departments: scientific, public, and content revision. Each department's missions were defined and the flow of information was established to support the museum's successful operations. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the insights you have given us in your museums. If I would be a very rude person, then I could say, and I look to Clara and to Nini, you have two houses dedicated to dead poets. And it's provocative, but in the sense, when you have to remember a very important moment in your daily museum life where you could say this was a very relevant moment, what happened there. Maybe you have an example of an event, of an exhibition situation, of something that you said, it's a living organ, the museum. Can you give us some pictures in our heads?
Well, I can try. And you are right, it is important to remember that even though Fernando Pessoa is a very well-known author in Portugal and in some other countries, we are aware that there are lots of people who probably never heard his name. So it is also curious in his history, because even though he is so known, he was mainly known after he died. So there are some discoveries that are still very fresh and very exciting. So that makes him more alive, so to say, as if it would be an author who would have been, but most of them are not, recognized in their own time. But just to give you a short example, he published only one book in Portuguese during his lifetime. He died when he was 47, and all the rest was found in a big wooden trunk that was full until the top, and then the others who came after him made his books, let's say. So about your question, so Pessoa is a writer who is studied at school. It is part of the school curricula. And we receive lots of school groups, and not all the students are really interested and willing to be in the museum. So I believe that I can give you as an example some of the reactions of these students who came because it was a program organized by their school, but then were surprised with the things they found out in the museum, and were feeling surprised and excited and maybe willing to read his text in a different way. When we tell them this story, that when we share that there are several other names under which Pessoa wrote, and this is like an exercise of experiencing to be someone else. That is something that usually captures the attention of younger people, just to share an example.
Thank you. Thank you for this question. It's very important. But to tell you the truth, Ilia Georgiadis' name in our country is very important. It's very important that everybody knows him. But the main idea of the museum, it was not to share that what is well known, that he was a great man, he was killed, he was fighting all the time, all his life against the Russian Empire, or he was warring and involving of to spread education. But most important, it is why he was important to show, what it was his role and what its importance of his life. This we try very hard to show this with different directions of the educational programs or exhibition. The main idea of him, it was to develop new knowledge, to create new knowledge of the statehood. What is the state? Because on his name that in Georgia in 19th century, it is the university, the first museum in the country, first archaeological excavation, first media, first published house, first newspapers, and to watch his life, it's very clear why he was killed. Why he was killed and how he was killed. Because even after his death, Georgia became a dependent country in 1918. That we say all the time that it was starts from him. But during these 5 years that we was making a renovation process, it was all the time it was the exams, and it was all the time it was guiding by his notes and qualities, because even today's relevant situation in Georgia, it's very important every day from his notebooks or the books, not the only writing and literature, for the personal notebooks and from the first pages of the newspaper that he was established in, and it was the first and last free media, like we call EMYA. Even today, sometimes we are thinking that it's these quotes or the sentence or the ideas is made by him, or it is 2023.
You mentioned the Thursday discussions. Can you say something? How it works?
It is our proudness, really, because it's these Thursday discussions, it comes from him. This house that we present now, and he spent in this house more than 25 years of his life. Every Thursday, it was the open door for these Thursday discussions. It was every Thursday, and it was like, for example, to say like Agora, like the discussion place for everybody, even the people not was inviting on the Thursdays evening. It was discussing about the political situation, about new publishing. Under the name of Ilia Georgiadis, the most important also, when we say that creation knowledge, it really means it was the writing and literary organization, one of the strong social organization in the country. And their ideas, it was to go to each village, each city, and to establish the schools in Georgian language for sure. And those we are talking in the Russian Empire's ruling at those times, that it was somehow prohibited writing in Georgian. And it was one side, it was to keep and share education, and other side, it was to preserve the language and writing. All the time we are saying that we have the very strong and past and long the history and the culture. Of course, we have the before ancient time, but the most important it is of this the elements and instruments of the state, like a court. We know that even in the country of Georgia, we know that he was a writer, but in his life he spent 12 years to be a judge, and he was working in the public sector as a judgment. And he was trying in different sector, and this is our main goal, to show. In Tbilisi we have 2 house museums, Yofilia Georgievadze, and we are making rehabilitation, the second one now. We need another 2.5 years. But most important it is to show this house as a real estate house, because there it was a house by him, was given to different organizations and different activities. There it was the first free medicine space in Tbilisi and in Georgia, that it was open for the free for each citizen, and it was giving the free. It was far extra the center of the Caucasus those time. It is 1907. It was the first published house, and there it was in 1909 they was printing and making the first musical notes, and it was the first and well-known expedition of the collecting, like we call it now, untouchable heritage, like it was all the national treasury that it was in the people.
When I saw the pictures, both houses are the buildings where the poets lived in. When I saw the picture from Lisboa, I think it's a more abstract scenography, and in Tbilisi it's more in a historic sense. These are 2 different approaches of scenography and how to tell a story. Maybe, Clara, what was your approach to not to reenact the Pessoa apartment?
Yes, when we developed the project for the new museography, we knew that some of the visitors who had known the house before liked the way it was made when 2 rooms of the original house were kept, and there was like a mise en scène of how it would be in the time when Pessoa lived there. But our decision was to make it differently, to use the room. Actually, we had to put back the floor because the previous architecture project considered it interesting to have some empty spaces. So the building was full of empty spaces, and we had the floor rebuilt. So then we would have more space and more walls for to build up the exhibition. And on that particular room, which was Pessoa's apartment, we decided to make, like you said, something not realistic, something more abstract. We drew in the floor like you would see in a draw of an architect, more or less the rooms as they were in the time Pessoa lived there, and then we use freely the space to tell stories and to show the objects connected to his life, his biography, the group of other writers and artists he worked with, his relatives, his, let's say, love, family life. And in this way, we think that we are more in a more updated dialogue with today's museography, but at the same time, we tried to give that room the feeling of some kind of intimacy, or the remembering that was he's the poet's address. So when people go to that building, it's also the experience of being there where that person lived, and trying to imagine how was his life some years ago, 100 years ago, when he crossed the same roads to reach the house as we do every day when we go to work as a team, or when visitors arrive. So we tried to find this idea of making it a memory place, but in an open way, to connect people from their memories or their personal experiences to relate with this person and with literature in a more general way.
Thank you. I like to switch to our archaeologues. When I was in Lagos in last summer, the place was full with English tourists looking for enjoying the summer, and in the museum if I'm not wrong, was also a school class from, I think, a local class. So I think there's a huge gap between these audiences you have in this place, in this local museum. How do you bridge this gap to be relevant for both of your parts of your audience?
Okay. So in Lagos Museum,
Can you take it a little bit nearer?
okay. We are designing, or we have some activities that joins families and kids to create this kind of this connection with the two publics, the students and the tourists in the museum.
Just speak in
Sí, en
castellano and
español.
you translate it, please. Yes.
Pero con el micrófono. Sí. Pido perdón a toda la gente por no poder hablar en
Tienes
inglés.
más cerca.
Sí, por no poder hablar en inglés. Sí, cuando estuviste en verano, llevábamos pocos meses abiertos y nos tenemos un público mayoritario de turistas que nos visitan todo el año y que probablemente es aquel público que frecuentemente se encuentra esperando para acceder. El grupo de escolares, incluyendo la universidad, ya son visitas más programadas. Y en este momento, como decía hace un momento Pedro, estamos trabajando ya públicos, actividades más específicas y intentando conectar los más pequeños junto con las familias y con los adultos, ¿no?
Well, I'll try to. I will try to resume. So, in the summer, normally, or until the summer, they have most of the public is tourists. So they have the exhibitions is for the tourists, for the main public. But the schools and the kids normally they schedule these visits to the museum. So they are designing some activities that are specific for this kind of public. Imagine that you have a school that has a certain theme to talk about. So they think. They schedule the visit and they think about how they're going to present that theme to that specific public. So we have a main exhibition that is for everyone, and you have these activities that are pre-scheduled to help and to give more information to that specific public.
Thank you. And Melanie, we saw this huge, wonderful new building, and I think that was also a new performance for the whole museum. What does it mean, especially for local people now, to have this new space and to make it that they are much nearer to all these artifacts and to your topics?
It's a good question because it was so difficult to invite the local people to come back to our new building and on our new project because they liked the old scenographies, the most of pieces present, and now it's not so easy. So we make a lot of activities too to invite people, local people to come back and reappropriate the museum project in the new society and our new challenges.
I see the time. I think everybody is hungry. So I just ask a very last question, and I think it's quite obvious that the approach you have in Tbilisi is also quite a political approach to open the house every Thursday for the public. And we leave your neighbor is Russia, and the war is going on. What are you afraid with what this concept could mean in this societal context you are in with your institution?
Thank you for this question. It's a very long discussion about, because all this problem, it starts from 18th century. But I will tell you that one example, when 1905, when Ilya Cavcavadze was participating in the Russian state, and it was the Duma as it is today, that he was screaming against human rights, supporting the human rights and against the death penalty. It is 1905. In Georgia and in the Soviet area, we stopped to discuss about this from 90s in 20th century. Today, we cannot say that we are not in war, because some years ago in 2008 we was occupied again by Russian Empire, and my country's 20% is still occupied, and from Tbilisi more than 45 kilometers we have the border in the villages, and the villages is dividing by two. To say that what we are doing inside the museum as a public space, it is, in one side it is a decision, and in the other side is a tradition, because the man to whom belongs this house and the person and name, the stories that we have as a traditional heritage, we have to follow this, to be honest, for the society, for the future. And when we say that we have to make the bridge between the past and future, the present is most important to keep and to serve, because museum, okay, all the time we say that the museum is out of the politics, but the museum creates the most important policy for as a creation education, creation as a democratization. Today is really very not only dangerous, it's quite difficult situation because of the war, because of the present situation in the Ukraine, because in Georgia it's not a guns, but we are in the war. But our museum continues to Thursdays, and our museum continues to support the human rights and the tradition of 19th century starts the Ilya Cavcavadze. This is the European values.
Thank you. So, thank you so much for this panel.